Welcome to episode 57 of Lucretius Today. I am your host Cassius, and together with my panelists from the EpicureanFriends.com forum, we'll walk you through the 6 books of Lucretius's poem, and we'll discuss how Epicurean philosophy can apply to you today. We encourage you to study Epicurus for yourself, and we suggest the best place to start is the book Epicurus and His Philosophy by Canadian professor Norman DeWitt. For anyone who is not familiar with our podcast, please check back to episode 1 for a discussion of our goals and our ground rules. If you have any questions about those, please be sure to contact us at EpicureanFriends.com for more information or to add your own comments on each episode. This week we'll be discussing Book 4, approximately Latin lines 632 to 721. We're discussing taste, smell, and similar aspects of the senses, and we'll discuss how the subjectivity of the senses does not mean that we can't trust the evidence that the senses provides to us. Now let's listen to the discussion with Charles reading today's text.
I shall now account why, as we find, different sorts of foods are agreeable to different palates, or why what is sour and bitter to some seems to others exceeding sweet. In these cases the variety and difference are so great that what is food to one will prove sharp poison to another, and it happens that a serpent touched with the spittle of a man expires and bites himself to death. Besides, to us, Hellebore is a strong poison, but goats it fattens and is nourishment to quails. And to understand by what means this comes to pass, you must recollect what we observed before, that seeds of different kinds are mingled in the composition of all bodies, and then all animals are supported by food, as they differ in outward shape, and after their several kinds have a different form of body and limbs, so they consist of seeds of different figures. And since their seeds differ, the pores and passages which, as we said, were in all the parts, and in the mouth and palate itself, must differ likewise. Some must be less, some greater, some with 3, some with 4 squares, many round, and some with many corners in various manners. For as the frame of the seeds and their motions require, the pores must differ in their figure. The difference of the pores depends upon the texture of the seeds, and therefore what is sweet to one is bitter to another. It is sweet because of the smoothest seeds gently enter into the pores of the palate, but the same food is bitter to another because the sharp and hooked particles pierce the jaws and wound the sense. Now by observing this things will appear plain, for when a man has a fever, either by the overflowing of the gall, or whether by the violence of the disease be raised by any other means, in such a case the body is disturbed, and all the order and disposition of the seeds are changed, and hence it is that the juices that were before agreeable to the sense are no longer pleasing, and those are more fit to enter the pores that fret and produce a bitter taste. For even in honey there is a mixture of rough and smooth seeds, as we frequent occasion to mention to you before. And now shall I pass on and show in what manner the approach of smells affect the nose. And first, a various stream of odors is continuously flowing from all bodies, for you must suppose that smells are perpetually thrown off, are emitted and dispersed abroad, but some are more peculiar to some animals than others, because they consist of seeds of different figures, and therefore the bee is attracted by the smell of honey in the air afar off, and vultures by the stink of carcasses. And so the natural quality of the hound drives him on where the hoof of the stag has led the way, and the white goose, the savior of the capital, can perceive the smell of a man at a great distance. So it is the difference of smell, peculiar to different creatures, that directs every species to its proper food, and makes it start at the approach of poison, and by that means the race of beasts is constantly preserved. But the smell or odor that affects the nose, some kinds of it are emitted much further than others, but no one of them is carried so far as sound or voice, not to speak of those images that strike the eye and provoke the sight, for they wander about and move lazily, and being scattered through the air, die away by degrees before they have gone far. And for this reason, because they flow with difficulty from the most inward part of bodies, and that odors are emitted from the lowest profundity of the subject, is proved from this, that the more they are broken or scattered by fire, the stronger they smell. And then we may observe that smells are formed of larger seeds than those of voice, for they cannot pierce through walls of stone, where voice and sound can freely pass, and therefore we cannot so easily distinguish on which side of us the body is placed that diffuses the smell. For the stroke grows cold as it moves through the air, nor does the hot scent briskly touch the organ, and therefore hounds are often at fault and hunt about for the trail. And this happens not only in the cases of smell and taste, but the images of things, and all colors, do not affect the eyes of men all alike, but to some they are more sharp and painful to the sense than they are to others. For the cock that claps his wings and drives away the darkness, and by his clear notes calls forth the morning light, the fiercest lion dares not stand against this creature, nor look him in the face, but instantly prepares for flight, and for this reason, because there are certain seeds in the body of the cock, and when emitted into the eyes of the lion, fret and tear the balls, and cause a very acute pain, which the beast in all his courage is not able to bear. And yet these particles are in no way hurtful to our eyes. Either they do not pierce them, or if they do, they find a free passage and return easily from the eyes again, so that they do not the least prejudice to the sight.
Thank you for reading that today, Charles. There's a lot of very interesting allusions in these paragraphs, from the holy geese of the capital to the cock being able to cause trouble to lions, to the age-old question of, can you kill a snake by spitting on him? I think I've heard that before.
I've never heard this before. You've heard it?
Yes.
I've heard it.
I grew up in Alabama.
I've heard
is
of you
this legend
fighting
coming from?
You got plenty of diamondback rattlesnakes in Alabama, I'm sure, that you could just go try and pick one and spit on him and see if that protects you.
I think we have some, but I think we have more copperheads.
Copperheads, rattlesnakes.
But I'm not exactly sure, but I hear more about people getting bitten by copperheads than any other snake. But I think I'll stay away from it. We have this is a big deviation possibly, but we have the snake handlers of Sand Mountain not too far down the road from me, where they go to church and they think they're in the Holy Spirit, and they pick up the snakes, and they think that if they get bitten, the Holy Spirit will keep them from getting poisoned. And there was a guy that died that way. So apparently there's a lot of interesting. Yeah.
I read the geese section.
Yes.
What it's referencing.
Well, let's go to it in order, I guess. But I find that one of the more interesting discussions of Roman history. I've thought about whether I could get some guard geese myself, but I haven't. I've stayed with dogs so far. But well, let's try to take it in order, because the first passage that we have talks about the palate and different types of food, and it's that one that we do have the allusion to. Hellebore being poison, but being good food for goats and quails. And then doesn't that one have the spitting on the, or we don't get to the spitting on the snake yet? Maybe we get that. Well,
that's in the very first, the snake spitting's in the first sentence, second sentence.
Second sentence. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yes. So you've never heard that before, and Charles and I have. Martin, have you ever heard of spitting, that spit could poison a snake?
No, I didn't know that. But I heard of something about snakes biting themselves, but I didn't know that this could be triggered by spitting on them.
I don't think it is.
Apparently that legend
Let me
goes
Google
deep.
This and see where that came from.
Yeah, please do while we talk about it, because the legend must go deep in Western civilization for Lucretius to be reporting it. And
okay, I'm just pulling up a lot of spitting cobras. Let me subtract cobra from from that.
The point being that if you spit on the body of the snake, he then tries to bite himself because it is so acidic or something to him, presumably.
But I would rather expect it's because of smell. It thinks it's something else there, and so he wants to bite that something else.
Yeah.
I can't find anything yet to say that actually happens. I can't even pull up the legend. I don't know. I put spitting on a snake legend, and then I subtracted cobra because I can't get spitting cobra.
Type up human saliva kills snakes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm getting all kinds of man fights off one of the world's deadliest snakes while
Wait a
driving.
minute. Wait a
He didn't
minute.
spit on it.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I don't know why you guys don't come up with this. The first one that I come up with on, I guess I'm using Start Page, is a article from 1875 from the Marietta, Georgia Journal. It says human saliva kills snakes. The Marietta Journal was told by a gentleman the other day that human spittle was as deadly to poisonous snakes as their bites were deadly to man. He says that while picking up a bundle of straw and trash under his arm while cleaning a field, a ground rattlesnake 4 feet long crawled out from it and fell to the ground at his feet. He at once placed his heel upon the head of the snake and spit in its mouth. Shortly afterward, the snake showed signs of inactivity and sickness, and he picked it up by its tail and carried it to the house and showed it to his wife, telling her that he had spit in its mouth and that it was poison. At the expiration of 15 minutes, the snake was dead. Of course, that's not it. That's not all. To further experiment, he came across a blowing adder snake, which ejected from its mouth a yellowish liquid. He caught it and spit in its mouth, and it died. He caught another blower, and it refused to open its mouth. He spit upon a stick and rubbed the spittle upon the adder's nose, and it died. Afterward, he came across a black snake, regarding it as not poisonous, and he caught it and spit in its mouth. Instead of the spittle killing the black snake as it did the poisonous reptiles, it only made it stupidly sick, from which it recovered. This conclusively shows that poisonous snakes have as much to fear from the spittle of man as man has to fear from their bites. I am sorry I read all that, but it was just so fascinating.
Oh, well, it is fascinating.
I saw it. I don't want to read it, though.
Wow. I guess that's just...
Eight myths about snakes from Victoria Museum.
Yeah, and of course, who knows what he had in his spittle, too, if he's in Marietta, Georgia and stuff. But yeah, you're right. That comes up under the Quora listing, Charles. I see that.
So much moonshine.
It's funny that not very much reproducibility. There's no, this is, when people poo-poo the idea of large randomized controlled trials that are double blinded. But I'm going to tell you, this kind of thing might make a believer if you into a good science.
I don't think this particular guy, though, in spitting into his mouth, I don't believe that's what Lucretius was talking about. I think what Martin said earlier is that
it was making them bite themselves. But we don't, I don't find any evidence of that.
I believe probably that we should consider the ability to spit on a snake and have it kill itself to be a litmus test for whether you are really an Epicurean or not. If you don't believe that happens, then I think you're totally out of the Epicurean movement.
Well, y'all come visit, and I'll take you to one of those snake handling churches where they give the copperheads and the rattlesnakes to the worshipers, and y'all spit on them, and let's see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder where the Roman tradition of it came from then.
Yeah, it had to be around for a long time. I don't know what Hellebore, and moving on to the poison and the goats and the quails and stuff like that, I guess that's probably true, although I don't know what Hellebore is. Certainly.
Neither. But what's like the common name of it? Does it have a...
Commonly known as Hellebores.
Pretty flower.
It is the common name. Huh?
This is the common name. Mm-hmm. They're in the ranunculus family. They're pretty... Well, I won't eat one if I see one. Now I know it's poisonous. So let's see. So we can easily observe that some things are poisonous to some animals and not others. People who have dogs have to watch out and keep their chocolate away from their dogs because that can poison them.
Also, as we'll go through the rest of the text today, but I do want to, when we finish this section of text today, talk about some maybe bigger picture issues of subjectivity versus objectivity. And I guess this poisonous aspect of it is pretty clearly a good example how you may perceive, you may not just perceive things differently in that you see them or hear them differently, but you can certainly be affected profoundly differently depending on your context and whether you're a goat or human or whatever. So,
yeah, the quality of poisonousness is not an absolute quality of the hellebore. It is in the interaction, between the plant and whatever animal is eating it.
That is a much better and more articulate way of saying it than I just You're exactly right. That's the point. It's not inherent within the thing itself. The spittle of a man is not inherently poisonous to a man, but obviously it's poisonous to a snake. So.
And then he notices that when someone has a fever, that things taste differently, which we know is true. You know, when you're sick and have systemic symptoms like the flu, things taste funny, and especially that's an issue with the coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
So this is timely.
I mean, down to the plague of Athens.
Yeah, I wonder how much, maybe there was a lot of taste alteration with that. How interesting.
Right. And his last sentence there that I'm reading is, hence it is that the juices that were before agreeable to the sense are no longer pleasing. So
yeah,
the obvious point that you guys are making, and that I'm just very slow to pick up on, is that the very same thing to the same person can be different
yes, exactly.
at different times.
Yes.
So there's certainly nothing inherently poisonous. It's a matter of the context and how it relates to the absorption.
And that has to be true in a material universe. So if you know, only in an idealist universe could you have something that had this, you know, property of poison that didn't depend on anything else in the material world. But in a material universe, you're going to have interactions between the sense organs and the object and the nervous system and you know, whatever is being eaten. And so it would have to be in a material universe that different effects happen when different material objects come in contact with each other. You know, how could it be any other way?
Right. Martin, anything?
Oh, no.
Okay. All right.
So, and then the smells. So this part, it struck me that he might have been interested. You have to be careful reading some of this with the personification of nature, and it almost sounds like things that will be good for us are like designed to smell good so that they'll attract us.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, we know what's really happening is that organisms which had a preference for liking the smell and being able to find the smell of things that gave them good nutrition and helped them survive and reproduce, those out-reproduced mutants that couldn't do that. And so being able to smell your food is a huge evolutionary advantage, right? But then there's also the evolution of the food sources, which he doesn't bring in, but I will. So the you know, plants that benefit from, not benefit like happy, but they survive and reproduce better by having their seeds dispersed in the feces of whatever animal eats them. So the ones that can put out a smell that attract an animal to eat them are gonna outcompete the ones that don't have any way of getting attention and getting their seeds spread. And if something smelled good, sweet, like, you know, the animal thought it was attracted to it because maybe it resembled something that wasn't poisonous, and it turned out to be poison. If it killed that animal, those seeds are not going to get spread, at least if it's a rapid poison. But if it's a slow poison, you know, you can have a mimic kind of situation where organisms can get fooled into eating things that actually hurt them later, like junk food.
You know, I agree with everything that you're saying there, Elaine, and there's different levels of things going on here. The subjectivity of the senses that we were talking about earlier is one sort of big picture issue, but you're also hinting at some other issues that in my mind probably explain the sequence in which Lucretius is deciding to tackle these things, because after we finish this passage today, we're going to go back to this discussion of images. And I think that even though we will probably disagree with the mechanisms that Lucretius ends up describing, that the reason that you brought up the evolutionary aspects of it is probably, in my mind, the reason that Lucretius is flipping back and forth, because he's also concerned with where things come from and how we perceive them and how our minds work in he doesn't use the word evolving, but how they move in the direction of success, I guess. I don't know.
Right.
But I think that brought up is obviously very relevant, even though it's not exactly what he's discussing in this paragraph. But
now I want to hear about the geese.
Yes, the
I don't
geese,
know anything
the holy
about
geese.
Martin,
do you know this? What certainly all historians of the I think it's the Roman Republican period, early in the process where the Romans were being attacked from the outside, and I don't see what I'm not remembering is who the enemy was, but the enemy.
Gulls.
The Gauls were approaching at night, I think it was, up towards the capital. And it was the the geese that were, I guess, just walking around in the lower reaches that they came to first. And the geese detected the Gauls coming up towards the capital and started quacking or whatever it is that geese do. And that was what woke up the Romans.
Yeah,
and alerted them to
the enemy forces were slipped past the guards, like the patrols and stuff, but there were these geese at the sacred temple of Juno, and the geese saw them, and they all, started doing what geese do.
Yeah, which apparently they're like able to smell men at a great distance, according to Lucretius here. I guess that's what whether they have hearing or smell or something that makes them alert. That's certainly one of the stories from the early Republican period that is very colorful. The savior of the capital. I don't have much personal experience with. Does anybody have any personal experience with geese running around their backyard to know whether they are vigilant or?
I slapped one at a zoo in my senior year.
And they're kind of scary. They look like they would bite you. So
yeah, they kind of charge you sometimes.
Yeah.
Elaine, we have to go back. I heard Charles say something very strange a moment ago, but I wasn't exactly sure what he said. It sounded something like he attacked a goose at a zoo.
Yeah. It was my senior year of high school. Part of our class trip we went to. It was like a whole day thing, where we went to various places around Duluth. It's a city in northeast Minnesota, but we went to the zoo there for a few hours, and they were just like Canadian geese walking around, and they were pretty ornery, and so everybody was, chasing them, and one got really close to me, so I smacked it on the top of its head.
I would be concerned that your friend was being aggressive, but I think geese can be pretty aggressive themselves, so he probably...
I'm the one who slapped it.
Oh, you're the one who... Did you walk up to it and slap it, or was it coming towards you and you slapped it?
It was coming towards us.
Okay.
So self-defense.
Self-defense. Good.
Yeah, it can be pretty mean.
Be careful, don't come at Charles wrong, because he might slap you.
Yeah.
I should have tried testing out whether or not my spit would kill it.
Yeah, that's right.
We're going to go around spitting on different animals to see.
Yeah. Well, we can turn our attention now to the other issue that Charles brought up, which is something about, I guess he's talking about the stronger smell comes from something that's like cooked, maybe is what he's talking about.
Well, that made sense to me, Charles, because think why he would say that, because I love to roast vegetables. And so, I'll cut some Brussels sprouts in half and rub olive oil on them, salt them, put them in the oven at 450. And you don't smell anything for a while, but at a certain point, you start to smell and you're like, And then you go in and shake the pan. And then I know when they're done, not just by the lip, but it's just like they're almost, but not quite burned.
Yeah, I made Brussels sprouts like that a few years back, and it took a week for the kitchen to smell back to its normal self.
Well, I don't notice that. Well, I don't burn them though. I bring them right up to that point where so they're crispy.
No, they were like, I want to say almost burnt.
Yeah, you might have gone just a little too far.
Yeah.
But it does, you can't smell them when they're raw. So I would, I'm guessing that's what. I mean, you can smell if they're raw if you get your nose right up, but you can smell them from the other room once they're really starting to cook.
Yeah.
Anybody have anything else on smell before we move over to the chicken flapping his wings and driving away lions?
Well, I'm still a little surprised about like not being able to smell food through walls, like a stone wall.
You're surprised by that?
Yeah, I guess it just depends on the food cooked back then. I would give them that opinion.
Well, you've got to have what you talked about last week, the crack under the door or something like that to give. I
Yeah.
mean, a stone wall is going to stop smells, isn't it?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't I can't, you know.
Even the masks, so at work when I'm wearing the N95 mask, so if any of my patients happen to be listening to this, please don't be offended, but some teenage boys, the smell of the feet when they take their socks and shoes off can be powerful. There's a
Mm.
Um,
certain bacteria that causes that called Pseudomonas. And the moms always look embarrassed. But I'm like, yeah, don't worry. I don't breathe through I have learned, I've been practicing for decades. I do not breathe through my nose when I am taking off the shoes of a teenager. I automatically breathe through my mouth, kind of close that area off. But I noticed that wearing the N95s, there are smells that can get through it, but I can keep breathing through my nose when I'm around smelly feet. I don't smell them through the mask. It's nice. Maybe we'll keep wearing those for a while.
We're discussing some very technical scientific issues today, so I don't want to leave Martin out of the conversation. Anything about
Yeah.
smelling today, Martin?
I have nothing to add, so I'm just listening and I prove what is said.
Okay. Okay.
Is anybody a hunter? Is that true that hounds are often at fault and can't find the trail? Are they more wrong than right?
well, I live in like Hunter Central,
Yeah.
in a very rural place. I don't know many people that actually hunt with their dogs, let alone, a proper bloodhound.
Where is that? I'm missing. Is that in that same paragraph about the nose and
It's at the
smell?
very end. It's
And
at
therefore, hounds are often at fault and hunt about for the trail. Okay, I see.
yeah.
I didn't read too much into that other than that dogs aren't perfect, that they can certainly
Yeah.
pick things up,
Well,
but they often lose the
he's
scent
talking
too.
about the direction, and the diffusion. So like the
Mhm.
sound is easier to tell the direction where it's coming from than smell.
Yeah,
And he says
yeah.
that's because of the way that the smell is diffused. But of
Mhm.
course, if there were no directionality, then that everything that he said in the section preceding it wouldn't work as far as vultures being attracted by carcasses. So
Right,
there is some directionality.
right. Well, and like you say, he started off the paragraph that we have by talking about how the smell doesn't carry so far as sound and it wanders about and moves lazily and is scattered through the air, dying
Yeah.
by degrees before it has gone far. So I guess he's certainly making the point that smells don't propagate with the same intensity that sound and sight do.
But the directionality doesn't come from the smell itself. It comes from the animal, which
Right.
uses the inhomogeneous distribution in space, and then by varying its path, it then figures out where is the concentration higher, and in this way it moves towards the source.
Yes.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's how it usually works.
Right.
Yeah, I guess that's what they're hunting about for. They kind of run around in circles trying to determine where the
And
intensity is greatest.
turning their heads, you
Hmm.
turn your head and see which direction your head
Hmm.
turning that the smell strikes you more.
And of course, if you do like this, if there's only a weak trace, then it's likely that dogs can lose the track. No?
Yeah.
Or also, they are interested in many smells, no? So they might be distracted by another smell they are more interested in then, and they follow that. No?
And
Like
yeah,
on the
right,
trail.
right, right. They might not have the same goal as the hunter, right? So that's a good point. Maybe it's not that they can't smell it; it's maybe they have a different preference. How funny. And I guess here we can also bring in the number of particles in the air that can be smelled and what the threshold is, like how many particles need to hit your nose in order for you to be able to smell whatever it is. That's different from animal to animal and within members of the same species. So there again, we have the participation of the perceiver in the perception.
Yeah, there's another a bit of a diversion because Charles commented that in his area the hunters don't use dogs. This is a bit strange. I think hunters are typically obliged to have a dog because if they don't kill the animal immediately, the main purpose of the hunting dog is not to hunt for animals but to search for wounded animals so that the hunter can follow and finally kill it.
Okay. Well, they use dogs in the South to tree animals, to drive them up a tree and then circle them.
Yeah.
That would be a coon dog.
Like a coon dog, yeah.
And then there's the retrievers. If you hunt the duck and shoot him over the water, the dog swims out.
I was just about to mention golden retrievers actually.
Yeah.
I'm not a hunter. I never have been. So take what I say about hunting with that in mind. But it's not like a bloodhound or like where they follow the trail. People just bring like their house dogs with them.
Well, they sure do use them at some airports these days to smell for not just drugs, but like I guess bomb making stuff, whatever.
I want a dog that can smell bombs.
What? Really? I have no idea what a bomb
it can be trained.
like.
It can be trained to smell the smell of chemicals which are then emitted by depending on what bomb it is. There are certainly bomb preparations a dog cannot smell. So, but the type of bombs he is trained to smell, he will be able to smell.
So, but they also could do the same thing. Maybe they get distracted by something else. And I went to visit my daughter in Denver last winter, and while I was there, I visited one of her friends. And I was wearing this big blue puffy coat, and their family dog did not like that coat. When I came in the house, started barking and growling. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to think like I'm the bad person because the dog doesn't like her. And, kind of freaky. And I took the coat off, and the dog was fine, ran over and licked me. So then I had to leave, and I was in the airport, and I didn't have the dogs on the way there from Huntsville, but coming back, I had to walk through this gauntlet of dogs, and I'm wearing that dadgum blue coat, and I'm like, oh no, what if this is a coat that dogs don't like? And they're gonna start growling at me, and I'm gonna have to go off to the side. But fortunately, it didn't seem to be a universally dog offending coat.
Well, maybe the repelling of your dog by the coat leads us into the issue of the rooster and the lion.
Yeah.
Who has any expertise on whether roosters have the ability to scare away lions?
Oh my gosh.
I mean, he's very specific that it's something coming out of the roosters.
Very upsetting to these lions.
What is it that comes off of the rooster? Seeds in the body of the cock that, when emitted into the eyes of the lion, fret and tear the balls of his eyes and cause a very acute pain, for which the beast in all his courage is not able to bear. And yet these particles are in no way hurtful to our eyes. So I don't know where that legend comes from.
So we ought to be able to see, like, if the roosters really scare lions, you ought to be able to use them like a scare rooster.
Yeah.
Put up a rooster statue in your yard to keep the mountain lions away.
You find a lot when you Google lions and roosters together, but I'm not sure what the point of it is.
All right, here I found one under a hobby farms page, and it says one of the most effective predator deterrents for a chicken flock is a chicken. Roosters are especially helpful in free-range flocks. It says they will fend off smaller predators like foxes and hawks because of their talons. Still doesn't seem like that would be a match for a lion, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I was thinking that what they were doing was waving their wings, kind of like a what's the bird that spreads out its tail so big? I thought that
peacock.
The peacock. Yeah. I thought they were just creating a visual sight, but Lucretius seems to say that there's more to it than that.
This to me is really interesting because I'm thinking about that we are not blank slates, and of course neither are other animals. and pattern recognition that is evolved. And so if it's true that a lion is afraid of a rooster, it wouldn't be a thought process like, oh, dang, there's one of those roosters, scary, I'm going to run away because he might, gouge me. If it were a universal trait, it would be probably less likely learned and more like a pattern recognition that was innate, so that animals which were frightened by roosters survived better than animals that didn't. And so this neurologic pattern recognition persisted in the species, if that's true. So but I don't know, I can't find anything saying that
No, I don't see
lions
that.
lions are scared, but that would be a way. And if they really weren't that dangerous to the species, then maybe an animal that had had a bad experience with a rooster would have learned to run away.
Is that what roosters
that would
do?
Be different.
Do they scream? Do roosters are they very loud? And could that scare them
No,
off?
they get you with it. Okay, so I've never been around, like, personally interacted with chickens, like dealing with them, raising them, but apparently they will get you real bad with their spurs. They've got these talons in their feet. Anybody know about that?
I myself got attacked by a silver pheasant. I was there with my wife, and when we approached his territory in the mountain, then it just stayed there, pecking in the ground. And when we crossed something like was apparently the border, he attacked my wife. She moved first, and we continued to the sightseeing spot where we wanted, and it would follow us and keep attacking us, trying to run against us, and with this impact. And of course, but that one doesn't matter. And it tried to peck us. So it didn't try to use spurs, or maybe by jumping against us, it tried it, but it wasn't effective. And when we left that sightseeing spot, then it followed us for a while, and until then, finally, it gave up. So it seems it's very territorial, and it attacks much larger animals. So, and because I think roosters are too small for a lion to be really a prey worse off, so that they have no reason to kill them. But as small as baby lions, they may have playfully approached a rooster and got attacked. So that might have then impressed in their minds then to run away from the rooster. So there can be a rational explanation like that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. That's why I was saying there could be a learned thing. But let's take it further and say, just hypothetically, suppose that those rooster spur injuries tended to get infected. The young animals that messed with roosters wouldn't be likely to survive to adulthood because they were getting attacked by roosters and dying off from infections, whereas the ones that were afraid of them stayed, lived to adulthood and reproduced. That would be a way that an innate fear could become part of a species.
And I'm being sarcastic here, but it could be that it was a particularly brave rooster, much like the brave geese that saved the Capitol.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, roosters are very territorial and aggressive. So there are dozens of videos out there on YouTube where people who want to deliver a parcel were running from roosters.
Yeah, I'd stay away from them. They look mean to me. I like to look at them from a distance.
They're not to be underestimated. There is like the competition of like rooster fights.
Oh yeah, cockfighting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in the interest of time, let me begin to bring us towards the conclusion. We've spent most of the day talking about how different senses can produce different results for different animals in different contexts. Let me raise this as a general question because it's come up on the forum. And the general issue is, does our description of the senses that we've been discussing, does that mean that the senses are subjective? And what does it mean to say that they're subjective versus objective? Because somebody might say that sounds like a skeptical position, as if the senses can't be trusted and nobody can agree on what their senses are telling them. Because I thought the whole purpose of Epicurean philosophy or getting something right is to determine what's real. And if everybody's senses are evaluating things differently, then how can we have any sense of reality at all? How would you deal with a criticism or
Let
question
Martin
like that?
say first, because I have things to
Yes,
say.
Martin.
Martin.
Or to say it another way, the senses operate differently for different people, but does that then lead you to conclude? I mean, so people are colorblind. Some people have better vision. Some people can hear better than others. Some people can have a more sensitive palate in tasting food and so forth. Does the fact that the senses operate differently for different people, does that mean that everything is subjective? Everything is relative. Does it mean that? And what are we even discussing when we raise a question like that?
No, that can easily still be objective reality, and most of the senses are good enough that we can, even though it's subjective from our position and individual capabilities at that time, it still indicates very well, very close to what reality is, and in most cases, people can also agree on what they perceive. No? So if they stand in the same spot, everybody sees a rainbow. No? So even though those who are colorblind will see it a bit different than those who are not. So people agree. Yes, they can see the rainbow. No? And there's then more in cases where more interpretation comes in, like if a complex action happened. So what actually happened? So that then when trying to recall from their memory what happened, then people start to disagree. No?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Martin, one thing that I'm thinking of is, and I think we've talked about this a little bit before, is this there's an a priori assumption. There are things that can never be completely proved, but my understanding is Epicurean philosophy says that there is an objective reality. However, it is perceived subjectively. And it's just by what you're saying, by not only comparing our own experiences over time, interacting with reality and using our different senses, but also comparing notes to other people, then we can get an idea of predictability and consistency in the way matter behaves, and that we have decided that we are interacting with a reality. But could we be the only person in this scenario? Like, could we be in a simulation? I mean, it would have to be a simulation so fancy that it didn't matter if we were in the simulation or not. We might as well proceed as if it's real. Nobody can ever 100% say things like that are impossible. So there are still people who believe they're solipsists. They think they're the only beings in the scenes of their life. That it sounds ridiculous, to think that to most people. So I think our experience is that there is a reality it's real, even if we're not there, so it's objective, it has existence itself, but we can only perceive it from the position of a subject and with our material bodies. We can only interact with the rest of the world materially. We have no ideal way or absolute way to do it. And some people seem to be extremely bothered by that. Well, but how do you know for sure? Well, it doesn't mean you have to be a skeptic. You can know well enough to make plans for yourself. That's not the skeptic position. Subjectivity is part of reality.
Charles.
Yeah.
Didn't want to go too far into the conversation without bringing you into it. Do you have anything at this point to add to what's been said so far?
No, not really. I've run into my fair share of solipsis before, and
well, you could probably save us some time.
Talk more about that. Yeah.
Ooh. Well, they're obviously very extreme skeptics, and this has mostly been on like Discord servers centered around philosophy, and I have to agree with Elaine that like the lack of certainty or the inability to have certainty bothers them extremely.
Yeah.
And that can be manifested in more ways than just, them thinking that they're the only things that truly exist, such as like the idea or the empty internet theory.
What is that?
It's this idea that the vast majority of people online aren't real, but are instead bots.
Oh my gosh.
And only like 10% are actually like real people.
Wow.
You can see the solipsist influence in that.
And you could see the grain of truth in the argument that there are probably a lot of bots on things like Twitter and Facebook and so forth. So.
Yes, and it's not something you can prove. And it's the same thing like a solipsist or a very extreme skeptic. Even if there is an objective reality at hand, no matter what attempt to assert that I'm not a bot will just be denied.
Yeah, because a bot would say that they weren't a bot. It seems
Exactly.
like a lonely idea. So I've known people who think that they like that idea that they're creating their own reality kind of thing instead of they're perceiving subjectively, which is, I think, accurate. They think they're actually creating it. And it sounds lonely. You could never actually meet another person.
Let me ask this question. Earlier in the conversation, I heard Elaine say that she at least understands Epicurean philosophy, or the position that she stated was that there is an objective reality, but that we perceive it subjectively. That's the part of the phrase.
Do you agree with that?
Locked in on. Yes, Charles, do you agree with that? Because the question I was going to ask was going to be.
Hold on. Do I agree with what?
The assertion that there is an objective reality, but that we perceive it subjectively.
Oh, of course.
Well, unpack the sentence for me. When you say that there is objective reality, what does that mean?
Well, it means that reality itself can't be denied or be pigeonholed as a product of the mind.
Like it exists whether we perceive it or not.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, that would be, I could see somebody raising the question that would be a good description of reality, that reality exists whether we perceive it or not. Does it add anything to call it objective reality? What does the word objective add to the discussion of reality?
So I think people are hung up on that because they want absolutes. So they want to think that there is that there's some way to bypass subjectivity and have a completely accurate godlike view of, an absolutely accurate view. But one of the problems that we discussed online a little bit this morning is that when you observe reality, in the act of observing reality, you affect it. And that is, especially obvious at the very, very small particle level. So when you make an observation on a elementary particle, you have to intervene with it in some way, so that you can't measure all the things that it is doing at the same time. You have to choose, because when you measure it, you change what it's doing. So that gets extrapolated in weird ways by New Age people to turn into you can bend spoons with your mind. Well, no, no, but our subjectivity does involve interacting with the material, our perception of the external objects. We're interacting with those materials. So there's really no other way to perceive except by doing that. People are bothered by that because they want absolute Platonic truth. They want the realm of forms. That's what I think.
Martin, anything to add to that?
No, as usual, Elaine can formulate this much better than I could do it. I fully agree with what she said.
Well, I don't want us to go too long today, but before we begin to end the discussion today, I want to make sure we at least bring into this what I think is one of the most relevant passages in the Epicurean text, which is going to be, I'm going to read from, it's fragment 5 from the Diogenes of Oinoander inscription, and I'm reading from the Martin Ferguson Smith translation, which is it's called English.enoanda.cat. It's the Catalonia page on Diogenes of Oinoander. If you Google Diogenes of Oinoander and Catalonia, I think it comes up very easily. But fragment 5 is what I want to read for just a second. It says, and there seems to be controversy about whether he's right in ascribing this view to Aristotle or not, but whether that's correct or not, we'll pass over because the rest of it is what's important. And this is the quote. Now, Aristotle and those who hold the same peripatetic views as Aristotle say that nothing is scientifically knowable because things are continually in flux and on account of the rapidity of the flux evade our apprehension. So that's what he's saying is the other position, and here's the Epicurean position. We, on the other hand, acknowledge their flux, but not its being so rapid that the nature of each thing is at no time apprehensible by sense perception. And then there's another sentence that I should read too, but basically that's the major point right there, is that the Epicureans were dealing with this issue of whether everything is in flux and is perceptible or not, and they were taking the position that there is a flux, that things are moving around, but that the flux is apprehensible to our sense perceptions. Any comment on that? Does that agree with the point that you're making, Elaine?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it does.
Yeah.
And of course, his proof of that is kind of interesting, I guess, or the next sentence is, and indeed, in no way would the upholders of the view under discussion have been able to say, and this is just what they do maintain, that at one time this is white and this is black, while at another time neither this is white nor that black, if they had not previous knowledge of the nature of both white and black. I think what he's saying there is that both sides of the argument are referring to sense perception in order to be able to even discuss the issue. So that the bottom line is that sense perception is the foundation on which you have to deal with the issue of whether there's a flux or not.
Yeah.
That everything does come back to sense perception. And Elaine, I don't know that I saw you comment on. I've used this example a couple of times recently, and I think it is valid, but I'd like to see what you have to say about it. The issue of if you look at your hand, you see a hand, but at the same time, you also know that that hand is made up of zillions of atoms flying back and forth and composing the hand. If your eyes were geared to see at the atomic level, you would see all those atoms moving around, but your eyes are not geared to see that level. Your eyes and your other sense perceptions are geared at another level, and that's the level that we exist on. Yeah. And I think that has a implication.
So what's the implication you think it has?
Well, that to some extent both are true. The atoms are zooming around, and your hand really is composed of atoms. But on the other hand, the way you live is not at the level of dealing with those atoms zooming around. You're dealing with the composite structure that you perceive, and you're making decisions and you're living your life at a level in which those particular atoms zooming around are not as relevant to you at the moment, at least, as the composite picture is.
Yeah. I think that's fine. I would say that some of our technology, it takes advantage of what we've learned about the subatomic level of particles. So it's not, it's actually, I think a lot of us think we turn on our laptop, it's like a magic box, we don't think about the technology that goes into it, but somebody had to have some knowledge of all those particles zooming around, as you say, that to be able to produce these things that we really, most of us use every day, unless we're Luddites. So, we don't have to know about them, but if we want to use them, somebody had better, or we won't have them anymore.
I perceive that when I use that example, it can be interpreted to mean a sort of an anti-scientific viewpoint or something, as if those things aren't important. But that's not the direction I'm really going in.
Right. I think I see what and I agree. It's a pragmatic direction. There's only so much that you have to be thinking about, or that's, practical to think about.
Yeah. And I'm thinking that there's implications as well in the issue that both perspectives are true and valid.
Uh-huh.
Both of
Yeah.
them exist. Both of them are important. But just because I think where I guess I'm really going, Elaine, is the issue of the nihilist or viewpoint that nothing makes any difference. I'm just a bunch of atoms swirling around in the universe. And yes, you are a bunch of atoms swirling around in the universe, but that doesn't mean that that doesn't make a difference to you.
Oh, yeah, right. Those are, I think, category errors.
Mm-hmm.
It's just because a car is made of atoms doesn't mean you can't drive it.
Right.
Yeah.
The fact that we may be a pinpoint in the universe, the fact that our bodies are made up of nothing more than material things, doesn't by itself mean that we should just blow our brains out with a gun. It doesn't mean that, oh, life is meaningless and we should just die. It means that, okay, yes, it's true, we're made up of these material objects, and we can get a lot of benefit by understanding all that. But in the end, just because we're made up of atoms is not an indictment of ourselves that we're just worthless. We're not just dirt.
Right. It doesn't take away our experience.
It doesn't
Our experience is real.
There's quite a bit of that to the Epicurean canon of like literature and fragments. And this is conjecture on my part, but we know that Hegesias, one of the Cyrenaics that made his own faction, advocated suicide for that reason. And I suspect this is where my conjecture comes in. And I suspect that's the reason why part of Epicurean philosophy is against suicide.
That person you mentioned advocated suicide for what reason, Charles?
That ultimately, I'd have to go back to Diogenes for the exact reason. But he wrote a book, he was a Cyrenaic and we know about them, but he was more of a very like destitute, lonely kind of Cyrenaic. And I'd have to clarify this later on, and I will. But he wrote the book that he's known for was called Death by Starvation.
Yeah, it's very unpleasant sounding. Yeah.
Well, is that like the voluntary stopping, the visa, the voluntary stopping eating and drinking? That's one of the legal end of life things that a person can do, even in states without assisted suicide.
I can't say for certain.
Are you talking about an old book, Charles, or a relatively modern book?
No, it's an old book.
But I mean, they probably did it back then too. I mean,
yeah,
people do that. They stop eating and drinking, and then
it predates Epicurus.
Okay.
Briefly.
Well, the reason I was raising it is, at least in my experience, we come into contact with a lot of people in the world who are raised religiously or just from some other cultural context in which they find their value in being part of some mystical system. And if you explain to them they're really made up of atoms and void or whirring little molecules, it blows their mind and makes them think that everything's worthless and meaningless and automatically you should just go jump off a cliff, because if you don't have God and if you don't have heaven and if you don't have this understanding of the meaningfulness of nature that you're a part of, then you're just worthless. And I'm saying that I think that this is part of the answer to that is that
I think you're right.
Okay,
yeah,
we're going on long.
I absolutely agree. I agree so much with that. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, we're long for today. Let's bring it to a conclusion. Martin, concluding thoughts for the day.
No, I think we said everything I could think of what we should say.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Charles.
Yeah, I said everything I needed to say.
All right, and Elaine.
I'm just going to say, viva la subjectivity.
Okay. All right. Well, we're long for today, so we'll bring it to an end, and we'll be back in about a week. So thanks, everybody, and talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
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 Thanks and bye.